Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there was a beautiful princess. Her name was Snow White, a name that suited her perfectly. She had skin as white as snow, so fair and delicate that it seemed to glow in the moonlight. Her lips were red like roses, always curved into a gentle smile that could warm the coldest heart. And her hair was black as ebony, cascading down her back in soft, flowing waves. Snow White was not only beautiful, but also kind and gentle. She had a heart full of compassion and always helped those in need. She loved to sing and dance, her voice as sweet as a nightingale's song, bringing joy to everyone who heard it. And she loved to play with her animal friends, often seen in the company of birds, deer, and other woodland creatures who adored her. Snow White lived in a grand castle, a magnificent structure with tall towers and beautiful gardens. But despite the grandeur of her surroundings, she was not happy. There was a deep sadness in her heart. Her beloved mother had passed away when she was very young, leaving a void that could never be filled. Her father, the king, had remarried, bringing a new queen into the castle. This new queen was beautiful, but she was not kind. The new queen was indeed very beautiful, with a regal presence that commanded attention. But she was also very vain, spending hours admiring herself in the mirror, obsessed with her own beauty. The queen possessed a magic mirror, an enchanted object that could speak and reveal the truth. Every day, she would stand before the mirror and ask, "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied, "My queen, you are the fairest of them all," a response that pleased the queen greatly. This affirmation made the queen very happy, filling her with pride and satisfaction, as she believed there was no one more beautiful than herself in the entire kingdom. As Snow White grew older, she became even more beautiful. One day, the queen asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "My queen, you are fair, it is true. But Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen was furious. She was so jealous of Snow White's beauty. She decided to get rid of Snow White once and for all. The queen called for a huntsman. She ordered him to take Snow White into the forest. "Kill her," the queen demanded, "and bring me her heart as proof." The huntsman took Snow White deep into the forest. The trees grew thicker and the light dimmer as they ventured further. Snow White's heart pounded with each step, unsure of what fate awaited her. But he couldn't bring himself to kill her. His heart ached with the thought of harming such an innocent soul. She was just too kind and innocent. Her eyes, filled with trust and purity, made it impossible for him to carry out the dreadful deed. "Run away, dear child," he whispered to Snow White. His voice trembled with urgency and compassion. "And never come back," he urged her, knowing it was the only way to save her life. Snow White was scared and alone. The forest seemed endless, and every shadow felt like a lurking danger. She ran through the forest, crying. Her tears mingled with the leaves and branches that brushed against her face. The trees seemed to reach out to her with long, dark branches. They looked like twisted hands trying to grab her, adding to her terror. The sounds of the forest frightened her. Every rustle and hoot made her jump, her imagination running wild with fearsome creatures. She ran until she was exhausted and collapsed at the foot of a giant oak tree. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and her legs felt like they could no longer carry her. As the sun began to set, Snow White noticed a tiny cottage nestled between some trees. It looked like a safe haven amidst the threatening forest. She cautiously approached the cottage and peeked inside. Her heart raced with a mix of hope and fear. To her surprise, there was no one home. The cottage was empty, but it felt warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, dark forest outside. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs, who lived a simple yet joyful life in the heart of the forest. They worked diligently in a nearby mine, extracting precious gems and minerals from the earth. When the dwarfs came home that evening, they were surprised to find Snow White sleeping peacefully in one of their beds, her face serene and calm. Snow White told the dwarfs her sad story, recounting the events that led her to their doorstep. The dwarfs felt sorry for Snow White, their hearts filled with compassion for the young girl who had suffered so much. They invited her to stay with them, offering her a safe haven from the dangers that lurked outside. They warned her to be careful when they were away at the mine, emphasizing the importance of not trusting strangers. Meanwhile, the evil queen discovered that Snow White was still alive. She was furious. Her magic mirror had betrayed her, revealing the truth she did not want to hear. She decided to take care of Snow White herself, determined to eliminate the threat once and for all. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, she created a magic potion, a concoction so powerful it could induce a deep, death-like sleep. The potion would put whoever drank it into a deep, death-like sleep, a slumber from which they might never awaken. She dipped a shiny red apple into the potion, watching as it absorbed the deadly liquid, its surface gleaming with a sinister allure. Then, she set off for the dwarf's cottage, her heart filled with dark intentions and a twisted sense of satisfaction. Section 5. A True Love's Kiss. The evil queen, disguised as the old peddler woman, approached Snow White. "Hello, dearie," she croaked. "Would you like to buy a delicious apple?" Snow White hesitated, but the apple looked so juicy and red. She took a bite. As soon as she did, she fell to the ground in a deep sleep. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White. She was lying on the ground. They were heartbroken. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't bear to bury her. So they placed her in a glass coffin. They put the coffin on a hilltop. They watched over her day and night. One day, a handsome prince came riding through the forest. He saw Snow White in the glass coffin. He was immediately struck by her beauty. He asked the dwarves if he could see her. The dwarfs gently lifted the coffin. As they did, the piece of poisoned apple dislodged from Snow White's throat. Snow White opened her eyes and smiled at the prince. It was love at first sight. The prince and Snow White were married. They lived happily ever after in the prince's grand castle. And the evil queen? Well, let's just say she was never seen or heard from again. Snow White's story teaches us many valuable lessons. One of the most important lessons is the importance of kindness. Despite being treated cruelly by her stepmother, Snow White remained kind and compassionate. She befriended the dwarfs. She treated all creatures, big and small, with love and respect. Her kindness was rewarded in the end. Another important lesson is the power of friendship. Snow White found comfort and support in her friendship with the 7 dwarfs. They welcomed her into their home. They protected her from the evil queen. They helped her when she was in need. True friends are there for each other, no matter what. Finally, Snow White's story reminds us that love conquers all. The evil queen's jealousy and hatred were no match for the power of true love. The prince's love for Snow White broke the spell and brought her back to life. True love is the most powerful magic of all. The end.